It's been just over a week now since the conflict in Iran began, and now the regime has a new supreme leader. 56-year-old Mojtaba Khamenei will take over from his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed last weekend in US and Israeli strikes that started the current war. In a moment, Ben Friedman and I will be discussing what the White House might make of the rise of Khamenei Jr. But first, let's listen to how Iran State TV announced his appointment.
This assembly, after thorough and extensive deliberations, and by utilizing the authority granted under Article 108 of the Constitution, and in accordance with its religious duty and belief in being present before Almighty God, in today's extraordinary session, based on the decisive vote of the esteemed members of the Assembly of Experts, appoints and introduces Ayatollah Syed Mojtaba Khamenei, may God preserve him, as the third leader of the sacred system of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
And here's what's known about the new Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. As I said a bit earlier, he's the son of the late Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed last weekend. He's a hardliner and, until now, a mid-level Shiite cleric. He has close ties to Iran's Revolutionary Guard and, so far, has never held public office. It's great to speak to Ben Friedman, Policy Director at Defence Priorities in Washington, D.C. Ben, the US killed the former Supreme Leader only to have him be replaced by his own hardline son. What is the White House going to make of this? It seems like a pretty strong rebuke.
It is a strong rebuke and an unsurprising one. I think anyone, probably including the president, unfortunately, but anyone who's surprised that the Iranians have essentially said, you know, we're not going to let you force us to pick someone moderate or more cooperative is delusional. I mean, it's the normal state of affairs that when you bomb a country and make demands of it, it tends to drive support to the government, to hardliners. People don't like being bombed. Normal countries are nationalistic, and that's what we're seeing here from Iran. And it's completely unsurprising. I think that the White House may well try to kill this supreme leader too. And I think, unfortunately, they don't understand that, you know, the more they kill the Iranian leadership, the harder line the Iranian leadership is likely to get. The president doesn't seem to understand that things can always get worse. They can always get more anti-American and more prone to resistance.
I just want to pick up on something you said. It does seem like the new Supreme Leader could have a pretty uncomfortable clock hanging over his head. Yeah,
I mean, the Israelis, for starters, seem likely to try to assassinate him, and the president, the United States government, has shown fealty to the Israelis, unfortunately, in his willingness to sort of go along with what they want and target these regime leaders. So, you know, President Trump did say that the Supreme Leader's son would be an unacceptable replacement. I hope he doesn't really mean that and he stops with these assassinations, but it doesn't bode well for anyone who's in the job under those circumstances.
What do you think it means now for how the conflict itself progresses? Does it raise the stakes?
Well, I think that it's part of a series of things that are happening that whether or not they raise the stakes, they show, again, predictably, that the Iranians aren't just going to sort of bow down and, you know, sign some deal that Trump demands of them, that they're going to resist and they're going to fight. And the reaction to being attacked and having these coercive demands made of them is going to be to assert their will and show that they can't be bossed around. The Iranians were very clear before the attack began a week ago that they don't like being told, do this or else we're going to bomb you. And in fact, that they're much less likely to do those things, you know, make cooperative agreements and so forth under those circumstances. I think they were telling the truth, and that the United States is simply making things harder for itself if indeed our goal is to get some sort of deal here by making these demands and bombing to get them. We would have been better off a week ago just signing the deal that the Iranians were ready to sign.
based on what you've just said, from the Iran regime's perspective, is this appointment a gamble, or is the whole situation that the region finds itself in a gamble?
Well, I think it's a gamble in a sense. I mean, of course, Trump said it's unacceptable to have this guy as leader. He clearly wants to be able to claim that he got some kind of regime change and got a more placid set of leaders in there, a more cooperative set of leaders in there. But, the Iranians view it as that if they give in to that kind of coercion, they're going to be bullied and coerced forever. And it's unacceptable from a standpoint of pride and I would say domestic politics to be pushed around that way. And in fact, they'd rather be targeted for death than to give in to the United States and Israel like that. And so, it may be a gamble, but it's one they've always said they were going to make. And again, it's just completely unsurprising.
So the new Supreme Leader's in place. How might the US now try and work with its regional allies to counter what is maybe a more hardline Iranian leadership, or as much a hardline as it was before?
Well, I think that the fact that there's a hardline leader in there, as there was a hardline leader before, doesn't preclude, in the future, some kind of deal where the Iranians would agree to some of the things that the United States had wanted them to agree to. In fact, that they were ready to sign a deal that was better than the Obama-Iran deal, the JCPOA, a week ago before we decided to bomb them anyway. The trouble is that now, having bombed them for the reasons I was just talking about, I think it's much harder to even get that kind of deal. So we're actually driving away the sort of deal we say we want and making it harder for the Iranians, I think, to accept that. So I think the United States should continue to hope that we can get a deal. And I don't think this supreme leader is the problem exactly. But probably we're not going to be able to get any deal out of the Iranians in the near future. And I think the president and everyone else should strongly consider that we should just walk away from this war. We don't need it. It's not good for the American interests. It's a mistake. We don't work for Israel. So I think, the sooner we stop, the better, even if we don't get a thing out of the Iranians.
When you say we don't work for Israel, could you explain what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, we shouldn't work for Israel is a better way to put it. I think this president has proven that he's just going to do what the Israelis want him to do. It's unfortunate. We thought maybe it wouldn't be the case, within the last few months. But, he's gotten dragged into war here with Iran twice now, essentially by the Israelis, by the White House's and the Secretary of State's own account. We bombed because we thought if Israel bombed, then our bases would get attacked. Essentially, the Israelis are just pulling strings, and Trump is dancing. And there's no reason for that. I think even in terms of domestic politics in the United States, it's sort of unnecessary fealty. So, we should not give the Israelis that much support. We should tell them, look, you're in charge of your own security. We don't work for you. And in fact, if you want to do these aggressive things in the region, we're not even going to give you all the money we give you. But we certainly shouldn't just, go to war on their behalf while we also, fund their various wars and their military.
And I think this sort of ties in well with something you tweeted a couple of days ago. You're saying this lamentable war on Iran is a product of both Trump's military adventurism and a misguided consensus that Iran is a problem that Washington needs to solve. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think the going back for decades in American foreign policy, largely because of Iran's nuclear weapons program, we've had this idea that, we need to, at a minimum, get them into a deal where they agree not to build nukes. And beyond that, maybe in the extreme version, which unfortunately is now governing the United States, reform the Iranian regime, the government, do regime change. But, I think Iran really is not a threat to the United States. You could argue that they were in the past to some degree. But I think that even their nuclear weapons program, which, of course, they've never crossed over into weaponization, it's a defensive measure. So I think essentially the more we threaten them and say we're going to bomb you if you don't have nukes, the more incentive we're giving them to have nuclear weapons. And you can see the way we treat countries like North Korea that have nuclear weapons versus the ones that don't, like Libya, where we overthrow the government. So I think we've been essentially pushing them to get nukes and to do other things we don't like in order to deter us, to deter Israel. And in a sense, we'd be better off in terms of Iran if we just left them alone. So the threat, I think, is something we've basically manufactured through our own misguided foreign policy. And it's, I think, not too late to just have, at least in the future, to have a relationship with Iran where they're just a normal country, where we're not trying to tell them how to defend themselves and how to govern their country, and we essentially can leave each other alone.
As you say, some of the justifications for starting this war from the perspective of the White House have been shifting over the last week or so. And a couple of days ago, Donald Trump said something to the effect of that Iran was something like 2 weeks away from developing a weapon. How credible is that?
It's not credible. And, recently, of course, the president was bragging and exaggerating that he had totally decimated and destroyed the Iranian nuclear weapons program with the bombing in June. The fact is that we did, along with the Israelis, severely degrade their program, which was even then, even in the spring last year, more than 2 weeks away, significantly more. And I think, the Iranians actually have shown again and again that they don't want to cross the line into weaponization. They've been basically trying to create this threat that they might to get sanctions relief and to sell us, the deal, sell us again the deal they were in under Obama and so forth with the JCPOA. So, I think the Iranians have shown they don't really want nuclear weapons. What they want is sanctions relief, and they've tried. I think it's been a bad strategy for them, but they've tried to use this program to get that.
Yeah, Ben, I sometimes ask people on these streams to sort of look into their crystal ball, and I don't like to put you on the spot, but I'm going to anyway. What do you think the next weeks and months could potentially look like?
Well, I think the United States is extremely unlikely to achieve many of its objectives. So of course it depends which U.S. leader we're talking about. The president has his maximalist objectives of having some kind of regime change. The Secretary of Defense has given a more minimal set of objectives that are just degrading Iran's military capability. But so I don't think we're going to get regime change. I think the Iranians are going to resist that until there's nothing left there. And we can, of course, degrade their missile capability. That's possible. Their nuclear weapons program is already pretty far away from being weaponized, as I said. So I think, the good news is that we could just declare victory after a while, not because the Iranians signed a deal, but because we could just say we've degraded them enough. Let's move on. So my prediction is that we're going to go on with this for a while. It's probably going to escalate further, and it's not going to resolve in a nice, settled, peaceful way. But I do think there's a good chance that this president and this administration will sort of shrug and move on, as we did with the Houthis in Yemen and other examples. And so we could get a kind of cold peace here within a couple of months, if not weeks.
Thanks a lot for that, Ben. We've been speaking with Ben Friedman, Policy Director at Defence Priorities in Washington.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Ben Friedman for answering our questions. And of course, we'd love a chance to answer yours as well. Please do write us in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more of this, please do hit like and subscribe to the DW News channel.